How can LSU beat Mississippi State? What are the keys for the LSU offense to beat the Bulldogs on the road? It's a really good Mississippi State team. They're 2-0, led by the defense. Their new head coach, Zach Arnett, is a defensive guy. He runs the 3-3-5 defense. How can LSU's offense, which, we've seen one good performance, we've seen one bad performance, play against this unit? I think there's a lot of confidence amongst LSU fans right now, and maybe within the LSU offensive room itself, because the last time you played a football game, you smashed Grambling State. You scored more than 70 points. Right now, you are, I believe, leading the SEC in total offense. Obviously, that's very inflated because you played a team that's not up to the level of competition you are, nor the level of competition you're going to see week to week this year. So I'm super excited for this game, because Mississippi State has a really solid defense. Some great pieces on all levels of the defense, so we'll really get a chance to see what's going to work for LSU, who can step up for LSU, and really how much have you improved since that embarrassing Florida State loss. We're going to find out about all of that this weekend. Couple of names to know, couple of notes I think that are important when it comes to Mississippi State's defense. Two linebackers that, if you don't know their names, I'm going to tell you right now, and if you choose to ignore me, you'll hear them again on Saturday. Plenty of time. So, Jet Johnson, he's an all-SEC linebacker, has had 2 games with double-digit tackles already. In Mississippi State's last game against Arizona, he proved why he's one of the best linebackers in the SEC. 11 tackles and an interception. Actually, 2 interceptions. 1 tipped ball, and then 1 where he just read the quarterback's eyes and completely destroyed a play. So, 11 tackles, 2 picks, SEC Defensive Player of the Week, Jet Johnson. Know that name. He's going to be a real problem for LSU, and Jaden Daniels will have to really avoid staring down receivers and keep his head up in the open space, because I'll talk about this in a minute here. He's going to have a lot of chances, I think, to get out of the pocket, move, extend plays, and run for first downs. But he's got to keep his head up because Jet Johnson is going to be on him like a heat-seeking missile and also reading him in coverage. Alongside Johnson and Mississippi State's second level of the defense, Nathaniel Watson, also an all-SEC guy. He had 10 tackles against Arizona right behind Johnson. Also had an interception in his own right. And then in the first game of the season against Southeastern Louisiana, he had a sack and a half. So he can really affect the game from a coverage standpoint, just a run defense tackling standpoint, and then also get into your backfield and get some sacks as well. So those are 2 guys that sit in the middle of this defense, command things, and really, really affect the game. That's the strength of this Bulldogs defense, is that linebacker unit, and that's not the same for LSU. And when your linebackers kind of lead your unit, that unit's usually pretty good because the communication's great, and then they really can just serve as the eraser when there's errors on that defensive line, maybe in the secondary as well. On the note of that secondary, I think this is the weakness for this Mississippi State defense, which doesn't bode well when you run a 3-3-5 because it's 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers usually, and then 5 DBs. So they returned just 1 starter from last year's team, and they've been a little porous so far. I know that, we talk a lot about interceptions and what Arizona did in last week's game. By the way, it was a great game. 31-24, Mississippi State did win. Ugly game. Arizona really moved the football. Jaden DeLora passed for over 300 yards, over 50% completion percentage. He's Arizona's quarterback, by the way. Also had 2 touchdowns, 4 picks. Now, I know you might be thinking, well, doesn't that mean Mississippi State's defensive backfield is good? No, because I just said, the linebackers are really the guys that had those picks. 3 of them by those linebackers, not the DBs, right? And some of those were even tip passes. I'll give credit to Mississippi State's secondary on one of those interceptions, but the others were all the linebackers. I think there are plays to be made against this Bulldogs secondary, the corners and the safeties. They're new. They're still learning. They're still adjusting to the speed of the SEC game and really just getting experience. And Arizona's got some pieces on offense, but Arizona versus LSU, who's got a better offense, I'll take LSU for the potential they have, for the playmakers they have. The receivers for Arizona last week, 1 guy had 8 catches for over 150 yards, 1 had 8 catches for 60, and then another had 4 for 47, which means there's opportunities for multiple players, multiple receivers to get open against this defense. And LSU has the receivers to do that. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Kyron Lacey, maybe Chris Hilton. they've got the guys that can run open and catch passes. And it can be done against this defense. We just saw it done last week in that Arizona game. Okay, so that's one of the biggest keys for the LSU offense. Can we get that vertical passing game going? We saw it against Grambling State. Chris Hilton early on, even Brian Thomas, long passes north-south. Can we see some of that against this defense? Can Malik Neighbors make a play one-on-one? Can Brian Thomas go up and get a jump ball? Can a Kyron Lacey burn his defender on a slant or a post route, take it the distance? That's, I think, the charge and the call for this LSU offense in this game if they want to pull out the win. And then, finally, Mississippi State's defensive line, they brought back some interior guys, but the ends don't get much pressure. Like, I was watching the tape back of that game last week, Arizona, Mississippi State, and the Bulldogs didn't get much pressure. They don't really have guys that are going to, within 2 or 3 seconds of the snap, get to the quarterback, force him out of the pocket, or bring him down for a sack. They had 1 sack last week. A lot of TFLs, but again, that's credit to the linebackers and, really just the run defense. I don't think there's players on this Mississippi State D-line that have that pass rush mentality, nor the ability. Jaden DeLora was running around he was over here. He was over here. He was taking 10-yard dropbacks. Like, Jaden Daniels can do the same thing, and he'll be able to take off and get yards downfield when passes aren't there. So I expect Daniels to eclipse 50 yards on the ground, and I expect this LSU offense to pass the ball at will and move the football in this game through the air.